Welcome to Literacy Home Learning. This is a literacy unit appropriate for children learning from home during this extended school closure. It is designed to provide learning opportunities for primary age children and will help to develop their ability within the national curriculum. Please listen along, pause the video when necessary, and be sure to listen to the tasks appropriate for your age and ability. To prepare for the lesson, make sure you have something to write with and your home learning book. Listen to the story and be sure to pause the video when you have chosen one of the tasks to complete. The tasks are suitable for different abilities, so choose a task that suits your ability level. Today's book is Tyrannosaurus Drip by Julia Donaldson and David Roberts. In a swamp beside a river, where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water's edge. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. Now across the rushy river, on a hill the other side, lived a mean Tyrannosaurus, with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted, up with hunting, and they shouted, up with war, and they shouted, up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. But the two Tyrannosauruses, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered, down with water, and they muttered, down with wet, and they muttered, what a shame that bridges aren't invented yet. Now a little Compsognathus, but for short we'll call her Comp, found a duck-billed egg and stole it from a nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it, and ran with it, and murmured, clever me, and won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duck-billed egg 4? Tea! She dropped the egg in terror and went running for her life from the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife. And the duck-billed egg went rolling, and at last it came to rest in, of all unlikely places, the Tyrannosaurus nest. Now the mother tea had great big jaws and great enormous legs, but her brain was rather little, and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, hatch out, my terrors, with your scaly little tails, and your spiky little toothies, and your scary little nails. Out hatched babies 1 and 2, as perfect as could be, but Mother T was horrified by baby number 3. And she grumbled, he looks weedy, and she grumbled, he looks weak, and she grumbled, what long arms, and look, his mouth is like a beak. He just needs feeding up, said Dad, and gave the babes some meat. The first 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, I'm really sorry. And he said, I simply can't. And he said, this meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant. A plant? Yelled Mum in horror. And Dad said, get a grip. His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. And they shouted, up with hunting, and they shouted, up with war, and they shouted, up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. Poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, you silly Drip, you've got the words all wrong. For he hooted, down with hunting, and he hooted, down with war, and he hooted, down with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. Drip's sisters soon grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum, but they turned on Drip and told him, "You're not fierce enough to come." And he cried, "They're gone without me." And he cried, "Alack a day." And he cried, "This doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away." So he ran off to the river, where he saw a lovely sight, a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs, all hooting with delight. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. As he stood there on the bank, a sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duckbills came to greet him by the rushy river's edge, and they hooted, "Nice to see you," and they hooted, "Have some veg." And Drip, who was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of waterweed and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river, and he asked them, "Who, oh who, is that creature in the water?" And they laughed and said, "It's you." That night the lightning crackled, and a storm blew down a tree, and it fell across the river, and the tees cried out, "Yippee!" And they shouted up with hunting, and they shouted up with war, and they shouted up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. Drip's sisters stepped onto the bridge, but then began to frown, for there in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, "Look out, look down." And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yelp. And one cried, "Water monster," and the other one cried, "Help." Their mother scolded, "Nonsense," and she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, "Good gracious me." The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, "Get a grip. You're all as you as drippy as Tyrannosaurus Drip." He strolled onto the bridge and scoffed, "I bet there's nothing there." Then he looked into the water and jumped into the air. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash, and the tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosauruses went splash. And spluttering and clinging to the branches of the tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall and all the way to sea. And the duckbills hooted happily, they hooted hip hip hip, hooray for the heroic one and only duck-billed Drip. Now you've listened to the story, it's time to choose a task. Listen to the tasks and pause the video when you have decided which one you would like to do. Can you identify the differences and similarities between the duck-billed dinosaur and the Tyrannosaurus? Think about their appearance and their personality. Can you draw your favourite character from the story and write words around them to describe this character? Look at the colours of the main characters. What colours are used? Why do you think they use these colours? What colours would you have used? Explain why you would have used different colours. Describe what kind of character Comp is. You can draw the character and write words around it to describe this character. Explain how Drip is different to his family. Think about his appearance and his personality. Listen to the story again and pay attention to the ending. From the point where the Tyrannosaurus fell into the water, write an alternate version of the ending. Listen to the story again and try to identify the different word types below. Listen out for adjectives, nouns, verbs and adverbs. Can you name any other types of dinosaur? Try to use your phonics to write the names of different dinosaurs you know. Can you describe where the duck-billed dinosaurs live? Can you describe where the Tyrannosauruses live? Can you order the main events of the story using drawings and a comic strip? Under each drawing, briefly explain what is happening and how the characters feel. Using the main events from the last task, can you rewrite the story but your version does not need to rhyme? Here's a little challenge. Can you make small changes to the story to make your own alternate version? Can you change the characters from dinosaurs to other creatures? Write a diary entry as Drip for the day the Tyrannosauruses fell into the water. Remember, a diary entry must be written in the first person and in the past tense. Use first person words like I, me, we, or us. Try using past tense words like went, fell, swam, jumped. We hope you enjoyed this story and had fun completing these tasks. Join us again on Home Learning Lessons for other stories and activities.